Hello, everyone. Pastor George here with our Mailbag Friday for this week. And this week, our question comes from my friend Cole. And his question is, so since you said you don't have weekly questions, here's one. The Christian perspective on beauty seems very complex. It's often referenced as divine and aspirational. Catholics seem to really emphasize this. But then there's also this superficial aspect of beauty that can be used to hide ugly, sinful motives or truth. As a pastor, how do you conceptualize beauty, and how should we as Christians think of beauty? That's a good question. It's obviously, I don't think it's something that many of us think of very much. But in the Christian mind, uh, beauty is always going to be attached to morality in some way. Ultimately, Jesus is never described as being physically attractive, right? One of the interesting things about Jesus is that there's basically no reference to the way he looked like in his earthly ministry, right? He's usually presented as being very handsome, but that's actually not necessarily the case. He probably looked very average for his time, or else someone would have referenced something like that. Um, Jesus is beautiful and attractive to us, not because he looked physically attractive, but because he followed God, right? And not only to us, but to other people. And that's why in Christianity we stress special and spiritual qualities over physical ones, right? What happened to Jesus on the cross wasn't beautiful, but in a way it was because it was a beautiful thing because it ultimately ended up being good, right? So you have this kind of disgusting act that's perpetrated, but it ends up being a beautiful one, and you see it shown in art all of the time in a beautiful way, not because of the people that are involved looking physically beautiful, but because of the act that was accomplished there, right? So we don't denigrate or dismiss superficial beauty, right? As in the sense of like what you see. We don't do that, but we don't hold it to be preeminent in the way that like the Greeks and the Romans did, in the way our kind of society does now, right? So one of the things you'll know if you study like Greek mythology is the way the gods are described, and the gods are always described as being outwardly beautiful, right? Especially people like Apollo and Aphrodite, but all of them look better than normal humans. Even Hephaestus, who is this guy, the god of smiths, who was thrown from the top of Olympus and was called the ugly god, was still more beautiful than a normal person, right? So you have this idea that outward beauty is what determines divinity, not inward. And so you have a kind of reversal of that in Jesus Christ, right? Um, and our interaction with beauty in the world, right? Because you don't want to just say that um, superficial beauty is inherently wrong and bad, right? That we can appreciate things like art or people who are especially handsome or beautiful. We can do that, but it has to ultimately point us back towards God, right? We have to see in these things something that shows us what is God, right? And I think we end up going off the path when we start to attribute to ourselves or to people, and they start to believe it, that they're beautiful or these things are beautiful apart from their connection to God. So there's a passage in First John that I was thinking of, First John 2, and it's verses 15 through 17. And John writes, he says, "Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever." Right? So you have this idea that, yeah, you have these things in the standard world that are good, but you can't actually prize those things or hold them as preeminent over the things that are divine. We can't ascribe them being more beautiful than the things that they're supposed to point back to, right? And this is when people fall into vain tendencies and things like that. So the tension with beauty for the Christian is that we are supposed to appreciate it. Art, people, fashion, all these types of things, but end up seeing those things as just a way that God shows us beauty through these things and point back to the source of that, who is God and Jesus Christ. So good question. That's how Christians should kind of think about beauty. There are whole books written on beauty. Theologians have talked about how we should see beauty. There's a whole corpus of stuff you can look at. But that's what I would say about Christians and the search for beauty. So good question, Cole. Everyone else, we'll see you guys Sunday and next week for more Theologs. Have a wonderful weekend. Peace out.